schemes and initiatives designed to provide businesses and individuals with as many options as possible to keep themselves going through this pandemic and to save jobs. Key amongst these initiatives are the Salary Support Scheme and the Manx Earnings Replacement Allowance, and both these schemes were brought forward for an initial period of 12 weeks. Now, we expect that the Salary Support Scheme will pay out around £30 million for the 12-week period, protecting, we estimate, some 11,000 jobs and supporting 1,500 businesses. In a similar vein, we expect that the Manx Earnings Replacement Allowance will pay out some £5 million, supporting some 2,000 individuals on the island. Of course, I'm pleased that recently the suppression of the virus has meant that some sectors of our economy are starting to return to work, and therefore we do expect to see some reduction in the level of claims both for the Salary Support Scheme and the Manx Earnings Replacement Allowance over the coming weeks. Nevertheless, I have to accept that it is far too early at this stage to expect these businesses that are returning to resume normal levels of activity and profitability. And in any case, many of those businesses will have to make up considerable ground, having been closed down for a significant period of time. There are also, of course, today those businesses that are not yet been allowed to open, and the financial pressure on them will continue to grow. It is simply now not right, therefore, that we start to close these schemes down at this present time, and I'm pleased to say that yesterday Tynwald approved the extension of the Salary Support Scheme and the Manx Earnings Replacement Allowance for a further 12 weeks. I very much hope that extending the salary support in this manner will provide a platform for those reopening their businesses to do so successfully, knowing that this vital support mechanism remains with them as they start to adjust to new working arrangements and establish and re-establish their revenue and income streams. I must caution and indeed urge those businesses who are reopening now to seek to move forward as quickly as possible, though. I'm sure that we will all recognise and acknowledge that these support schemes cannot go on indefinitely, and indeed flexibility is now built into the schemes to allow the Treasury to determine when and if support should be curtailed for certain sectors. But to do that, we need data, and we need to be confident that businesses are operating as fairly and equally as possible in the circumstances. We do not have that data yet, and it is right, therefore, that we continue to extend support to protect jobs and the economy. 10 weeks ago, there was a widespread acknowledgement that we needed to think local, act local, and buy local, and the island has responded well over this period. Now we need to keep going with this mantra as our businesses open up. Your support now for local businesses will help stabilise our economy, it will help maintain jobs, and it will create opportunity. Please, I ask, if you are going to spend your money, think local, act local, and buy local. Of course, as we approach the summer season, we all hope that the virus will remain suppressed and we can open up more of our businesses and industries. Given all the uncertainty, it is likely that many of you may now choose to spend your summer breaks and holidays on the island. A well-planned staycation this year will be an added bonus to the domestic economy, and I know that my colleagues in the Department for Enterprise will be considering how this opportunity can be maximised within the framework of government rules and regulations on coronavirus. Of course, more broadly, the government must also play its part in regaining momentum in our economy. We are working now on developing our plan to push vital government spending programmes forward and assessing how specific support programmes can be delivered to those sectors who may be continuing to struggle. Yesterday, Lawrence Skelly confirmed our plans for high-speed fibre to be rolled out across the island by Manx Telecom, and we need to get on with this as fast as we can. We will review our capital spending programmes now to bring forward relevant and prioritised investment in our key assets and infrastructure. We will re-energise our initiatives to attract businesses to the island, and we will examine our financial support schemes that will be vital in aiding and developing our existing businesses. We will bring all this together in a short to medium term economic strategy, which will be brought before Tynwald at the earliest opportunity. We need to support new business opportunities, help existing businesses adapt business models, and we need to create new jobs. I do not want to underestimate that there is a significant challenge ahead of us. We all know that, but there is no reason not to be optimistic that the island can pull together in bringing our economy back to life. It will be tough, but as much as we have relied on each other to suppress and contain the virus and protect health, we now need to rely on each other to get back to work and to rebuild the economy. At some point, we have to let go of fear and start to embrace the new living and working with coronavirus. However you choose to do that, we need to all play our part in supporting our local economy, supporting local businesses, and supporting local jobs. Thank you very much, and I will now take any questions, starting with Manx Radio and Tim Glover. Good afternoon, Tim.
Pastor, my Minister. Last Friday you were giving evidence to the Public Accounts Committee, and you said that the overall cost of the schemes was lower than you anticipated. Where does JobSeeker, and you mentioned there over 1,000 jobs have been saved by the support packages, where does JobSeeker's allowance factor into the calculations, as unemployment in April stands at 1,347, a rise just shy of 900 in 2 months, and obviously another cost to bear for government?
Yeah, so I mean, combined, so we haven't featured that figure in today's briefing. I focused on the MIRA, the Manx Earnings Replacement Allowance. So we have 2,188 people on MIRA. We have just over 1,300 people on job seekers. They're large numbers, Tim. It's hard to understand at the moment the true relevance of the data until we start to get all our sectors back to work. When we do that, the mist will effectively start to lift, and we'll see the true extent of unemployment and those needing to find new jobs. So it's a figure that we are very conscious of. Clearly you look at these figures with some alarm, but you also have to recognise that as we start to get people back to work, you should see some decline. As things level out, once the sectors are back, once the support schemes start to lift, then we'll get a true feel for how damaged we are, or how much we're going to suffer from an unemployment. Clearly, it would be remiss not to accept that there's going to be higher levels of unemployment. 1,300 plus is a figure I think that we can deal with. If it gets higher than that, as we go through this, then clearly we'll have much more pressure to work out how best we can reskill our workforce, where those opportunities exist, what we need to do from an educational perspective and retraining perspective.
Can I just follow up on this particular question? Is around 900 a figure that you would have expected in the opening 2 months of job losses? Because we all knew there were going to be job losses.
It was just too hard to really determine that, Tim. You expected the figure to rise. I mean, 1,300 or so, which is on the job seekers, are not figures that we haven't dealt with previously. In fact, before this government came in, or just as this government came in, or just slightly beforehand, those figures were about 1,300. So, we can deal with that kind of level in terms of, as I said, focusing on new opportunities within the economy, looking at retraining, reskilling. Clearly, as you move up the scale and get further numbers, beyond the 2,000 figure up to 2,500, a job becomes much more complex, if you like, and then we need to understand how best to direct government spending, what the government needs to do to create as many opportunities as possible.
And can I turn to Douglas Promenade, one of those capital projects? Back in November last year, it was revealed costs for signalling for the track crossing the road at the War Memorial to the single track to the sea terminal were about £1 million, and it wasn't included in the overall scheme budget. We then found out that Geoffrey Robinson at the next strategic meeting wanted the scheme to have the lowest possible costs, even at the risk of compromise to the horse tram service. Well, just following that money, it seems the single track to the sea terminal has been in doubt well before coronavirus appeared. Has Treasury put a big squeeze on the project, so it appears to come in as close to budget as possible, even if this is against the original will of Tynwald?
No, Treasury has not put a big squeeze on the project. We authorised the budget in the last. We authorised the amounts to expenditure in the last budget, and the Department of Infrastructure are well aware that any overspend that they might incur on this project will need to be found from within their existing plans and projects. But we haven't put a big squeeze on the Department for Infrastructure. I think they have taken a sensible view on that project, what needs to be done to get it done within the circumstances that we're living in, to take the opportunity of perhaps a lack of tourists, a lack of visitor accommodation being utilised during this period to complete the promenade. And that's very much an operational decision to get on with it and to alter the scheme plans as they've outlined.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tim. Energy FM, Chris Cave.
Good afternoon,
Good
Minister.
afternoon, Chris.
You mentioned the importance of buying local and encourage people to have staycations. The impact this pandemic is going to have on many industries will be severe and long-lasting, not least for the tourism and hospitality trades. There's often talk about a new normal, and that causes further worry for owners of restaurants, pubs and clubs that people may still be discouraged and feel unsafe about going out once this virus has passed. In that case, are there any considerations to ease the impact of this for those industries? For instance, a government subsidy on alcohol duty, perhaps?
So the purpose of announcing today that the salary support scheme, which is very much the pillar of the support mechanisms that's providing a lot of valued support to our businesses, is going to be extended, is to give as many businesses every opportunity to get back on their feet over the next 12-week period, effectively through to the end of August. What we will need to do then is consider, almost on a sectorial basis, sector by sector, what might need to be done to help support those sectors through an extended period, to allow them every opportunity. Clearly there are challenges. There are challenges for a lot of businesses, but for our leisure businesses, our hospitality industry, these challenges are going to be increased because of the rules and that are going to be in place, particularly around social distancing. They will need to adapt to that. Government's going to have to pay very close attention to the impact on that. And we need to try and find ways around that. And I think the businesses and the business models will probably need to adapt. But, we will consider how to support these sectors on an ongoing basis. Once they get back, once we can see the levels of trading that they're at, once we can understand a bit more about the obstacles they're facing, and then we need to make some broader decisions as to what level of support and what context do we support each business sector.
But just to clarify, you are working on further support packages for these people in the hospitality industries, as if they do have to keep social distancing measures in place once the virus has passed, their business could be down and they could still struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're looking at a range of economic factors at the moment. I think the most important thing for us generally is to make sure that we have a high-level strategic economic plan that is really delivering on the ground, delivering maximum value to sustain jobs and create jobs. And that's what we're going to be bringing forward in the next couple of weeks, I hope. And as soon as that's packaged together, we'll be bringing that to Tynwald to gain their support. And as I said, then we will need to look at these sectors on a case-by-case basis and try and understand what level of government support should be available, or what framework government needs to put in place to give the individual businesses an equal and fair chance of making it through and adjusting their business models and adapting to this new normal that everybody's talking about.
Okay, there was, as has already been said, expected record number of those registered unemployed last month. How quickly do you forecast this number to come down to what are regarded as the usual levels of unemployment, and how do you plan to mobilise the workforce?
Well, it's very hard to say where we expect unemployment to be, as I outlined to Tim earlier, we do expect, I think, initially to see people getting back to their jobs, but then, of course, whilst the support systems in place, it may mask to a certain degree what the actual reality is on the ground. Perhaps as those support starts to fall away, as businesses get back on their feet, then we'll get a true picture of the unemployment level. I'm certainly not going to predict where that will be, but suffice to say it will be significantly higher than where we'd got it to before this all started. And bear in mind, we'd brought it down to its lowest level for some 20 years. The key then will be to us understanding what we need to do to reskill people, understand where the new opportunities are lying, where businesses are developing business opportunities, and then we will start to understand what we need to do as a government to help facilitate that and to get people back into work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So Simon Richardson at Business 365.
Good afternoon, Mr. Cannon.
Good afternoon, Simon.
My first question, government's purchase of the Steam Packet company, it's looking like an inspired decision at this time. But given the turmoil in the aviation industry and the real possibility that when the crisis ends, we may have virtually no flights between the Isle of Man and the UK, has government reconsidered setting up its own airline to safeguard services, as Guernsey did some years ago?
Yeah, so again, the airline industry is under huge pressure at the moment. We all know that. The government is maintaining a framework of air links at the moment, a small framework of air links with flights to London and Liverpool. But we need to understand in the next few weeks the airlines' plans, predominantly what our main carriers are, what EasyJet's plans are, for example. And once we understand what their proposition is, and I'm sure they will have one, then we will need to understand what government's plan needs to be. I'm not going to dismiss necessarily that government needs to take a more proactive stance in this space, but I think we do need to give the airline industry some opportunity to present to the island what its plans are, and clearly one would expect initially some sort of phased return to a new normal in terms of air travel. So I think that remains uncertain. It's far too early really for me, Simon, to give any firm commitment other than to say, again, this is another area that we are looking at incredibly carefully.
Well, you're not against the principle.
I think the government, we need to, things are changing, frameworks are changing, the way we've done things in the past or the positions that we adopted pre-COVID are not necessarily the positions that we will have to adopt afterwards. In all honesty, I think from an airline industry perspective, I would prefer us to have a stable carrier providing us with well-priced travel options. And clearly to balance alongside that, one hopes that our purchase of the Steam Packet will also prove to be an inspired decision. And I hope that actually as the future progresses, we understand a bit more about the balance we will need to adopt between sea and air travel and be realistic in our ambitions, I guess, for services to and from the island, certainly in the short to medium term. But given all the uncertainty in the airline industry, given the need for us as an island to maintain our critical transport links to ensure that our people are able to get off the island, that our businesses are able to operate, then clearly, we pay very, very close attention to the options that are opening up in front of us, try and understand a bit more about what framework we will be left with, and we obviously speak closely to the airlines, and if necessary, then government would consider taking a more proactive step if it felt for any reason that the island would not be left with appropriate air links. But it's very early days on that, Simon.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And secondly, is there a figure in the UK's recovery that you have in mind where you would think that you would be satisfied to consider reopening air services and reopening the island internationally?
Yeah, I mean, we've taken and we've relied a lot on the advice and data that's been coming through and being provided by our healthcare professionals. We are managing, that's very much about border management, that question. We are managing our borders in the most appropriate way, and we have slowly but surely started to understand what we are capable of and what we need to do to have an appropriate system for our residents. I'm sure that that's going to continue to progress in the coming weeks, but I think I would probably leave it at that. I think for me to answer that question, that means really sort of having open borders. And at the moment, we're committed to protecting people's health on the island. We're committed to residents-only travel. We're progressing that, and we're going to continue to progress that in the coming weeks. And again, as we move forward, it'll be something for us to consider what actions the UK, for example, are undertaking, what actions other countries are undertaking. Clearly, we don't want to be left completely out of the loop in terms of accessibility to travel, but we do obviously want to be in a position to ensure that certainly on an ongoing short to medium term basis, we're protecting our own residents living on the island as much as possible.
Thank you very much.
And finally, Josh Stokes from ITV. Josh.
Good afternoon, Minister. You've spoken today about extending the schemes by 12 weeks. I'm just wondering, how does that directly coincide with the phased return to work? Do you have an aim of what phase you hope to reach by the 12th week in reference to the medium-term response document? Because otherwise, presumably, the schemes may have to be extended again if phase 5 of hospitality isn't reached by then.
Yeah, there's no definitive timescales. We are doing our best to act with what we can see in front of us, and as it stands today and in the last couple of weeks, we can feel confident that we've suppressed the virus, we've contained it, we've got the right facilities in place, and as I've mentioned many times, the health service is well prepared to deal with anybody who needs to go into the hospital for treatment. So there's no timescales attached. As we're currently progressing, one would feel confident that we are going to get more businesses back to work, and that we're going to do that in a relatively healthy timescale. I certainly would not be expecting outstanding businesses towards the back end of July in terms of return. So one would have expected that the vast majority of our businesses should be back, at least a month before the extension of these schemes, based on the current tracking of the virus and based on the current performance levels. And we should feel at some point you have to take a confident, optimistic approach that actually the island's got this under control. There's very little evidence to say that we shouldn't be optimistic now, that we shouldn't be confident about the situation on the ground, and that we shouldn't be confident that we can get most of, if not all of our businesses back and operating in the next few weeks, rather than wait for the end of these, the period outlined towards the end of these schemes.
And presumably, if all those phases do come together, as you say, within the 12 weeks, then the next thing would be borders opening.
Look, again, as I've just outlined to Simon, we are very careful with the border situation. Look, the important thing is we've got to progress through this. We've got to work out how to manage the borders effectively. We've got clearly cognizant that residents on this island, whilst everybody wants to be protected, there's also very good reason for people to come to and from the island, whether that's on compassionate grounds, whether that's on commercial grounds, or for whatever other reason. We can't just say sort of lockdown forever. We're managing that. I think we're managing that in a way so that we're becoming more confident, more understanding of what needs to be done. And when I think the document talks about borders open, one also has to recognise that we may only have that open to a limited capacity. So that question is very much at the forefront of the Council of Ministers' minds at the moment about how we manage the border going forward, how we offer the best protection possible to ensure that we don't slip back and allow the virus to come onto the island effectively unnoticed, if you like, as much as possible. Clearly, there's always risk in that. The answer to that is smooth, effective, efficient, proper testing and controls at the border. And as I said, we're working through that. We recognise there's quite a lot of pressure in this area, but we're doing it in our own time in terms of ensuring that we are prepared to protect the island as much as we possibly can.
Okay, just off the back of that, there's a second question. Isn't there a real opportunity to potentially boost the tourist trade on the island as we slowly start to move out of the pandemic? Presumably people won't be travelling long distances for a while, and the Isle of Man may seem like a potential holiday destination for many more people than it did. So is this something you're looking at from a financial perspective, maybe, taking benefit from that?
Well, I alluded to it in my opening remarks, Josh, that actually, it is likely that international travel will be curtailed. It's hard to understand what holiday options will be available for people, and I accept that a lot of people will be thinking that this summer is actually the best option for them, maybe to stay at home. There could be opportunities for us in that. We need to draw up and understand what the scale of opportunity is, but the message is actually for people who are considering a staycation, and this is the perfect time for people to think about a staycation. If we can maintain the control levels on the virus at the current existing rates, if we can open up more businesses, if we can understand exactly where we need to be safely in terms of levels of gatherings, and we can open up our restaurants and our leisure businesses, then the answer to the question is actually we could recover some ground. If we take that, what would have been off-island holiday spend, and convert that to on-island holiday spend, and people take that opportunity for a staycation and look to explore and maximise the opportunities that exist for them to have a break on the island.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, well, thank you very much. Oh, Tim is waving at me. Sorry, apologies. Tim.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the UK Chancellor's comments, Rishi Sunak, who's warned of a severe recession and, quote, the likes of which we've never seen. Obviously, the UK is our biggest trading partner. The effects are likely to ripple through into the Manx economy. How much of a concern is that? And are you, and I know you're not going to give me an answer, but is it under consideration a change in income tax rates?
I think, in short, Tim, I mean, again, I'll be delivering a budget statement, a budget update, and a statement in July, and I'll outline exactly any plans that the Treasury has. One has to recognise at that stage we'll have a better understanding of the impact on our economy and on government revenues. As I've said quite a few times, it's not really just the cost of the schemes that we're delivering per se. It's the impact in terms of any loss of revenue that we will see, both from VAT, customs and excise, and of course income tax and national insurance. So once we get a better position, once we understand that, then we'll be in a better position to deliver a much more meaningful statement around what sort of actions that the government is taking. But I'm pretty clear now that we don't want to regress on the island. We don't want to take negative steps that are going to impact on our development. If anything, we want to look ahead positively to try and work out how best to get out of this, to get people back to work, and to support businesses through what is forecast to be a tricky 12 to possibly 18-month period, depending on who you talk to. I mean, the fact is the UK is already in recession, but like us, they have still got support schemes going. They are likely to continue, it would appear, through till the autumn, those schemes. And again, as time moves forward, you begin to get a better understanding of where you're going to see the impacts on this. So, for example, today, I think you saw Rolls-Royce announcing that 9,000 jobs are to go globally, and clearly one then asked the question about what sort of impact that might have on manufacturing on the island, what we then might need to do, in terms of reacting to those types of moves. I think the island is in a strong position in terms of our finances. We've got robust finances. We are going to support that spending, and we've already made it clear that we're going to go and syndicated borrow of £250 million. And that money was initially thought to be there for cash flow purposes, but it is equally that we may well find parts of that money to be used to support the economy. But as I said, it'll be July before I'm in a position to issue a proper, meaningful statement that will really outline how we can meet the challenges of a UK recession and what we need to do to support our economy going forward proactively, hopefully without regressing back. And we've had a challenging 10-year period, 2008 to 2018, 2019. And just before this virus came about, in many ways, there was a lot of positive indicators. People were starting to get proper pay rises again, had more pounds in their pocket effectively to spend. And of course, we had unemployment at 20-year low point. We don't want to lose the progress that we'd made in that 4 years and then have to suffer another decade of struggle. So we're looking to try and avoid that and go forward as positively as possible. And obviously, there may be some adjustments possibly in terms of what we need to do as a government in terms of revenue collection, but we don't want to regress. That will be my message at present. Thank you very much indeed, and enjoy the rest of your day.